You're listening to an archived Cabral Concept podcast. After listening to this show, check out the most up-to-date podcasts available at stephencabral.com/podcasts or search directly on iTunes. And now, welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Right now, we're about to get into our second edition of this weekend's Cabral House Call. And these questions, although very different from yesterday, all pertain to wellness, to weight loss, to anti-aging, to nutritional supplement recommendations, nutrition, diet recommendations. So really looking forward to these. Just read them over actually for the first time. So I'm excited to get into them here today. And I think they're going to also help everyone open up their mindset in terms of how they can take their own nutrition, their own exercise, their own lifestyle to that next level. Because really, no matter where we're at right now, I think each one of us can do just a little bit better. And I'm not asking for a lot better. All I'm asking for is one more better choice throughout the day. I honestly believe that's how we make these nice incremental changes, which eventually leads to great changes over the course of our life. Because one of the questions today is asking about recipes and different things that we do. And just keep in mind, I'm going to talk about this, but our progression as a family has happened really over the last, I would say, 5 to 7 years. Like that's when we made the most amount of progress. Now, keep in mind, I've been into health for 20 plus years, but really the accumulation of knowledge kind of hit that tipping point about 5 to 7 years ago where we really ate how we're eating now. And that's a much cleaner lifestyle and nutrition. So looking forward to all the questions today. And the first one's from Shawn. He writes, "Hi, Dr. Cabral. Can you recommend a protocol to heal a tear around the area of the anal sphincter? It was likely caused by poor diet choices and major constipation. I've cleaned up my diet, no wheat, dairy, etc., but the wound does reopen every few months or so." All right, so Shawn, I work actually a lot with this in my practice, and that's because I work with so many people with digestive-based issues. So this is where I see it start to happen. This is called an anal fissure, or it can be any type of irritation. It can be a swelling of a hemorrhoid. So what we're looking at, and it absolutely is correlated with what you're eating, what I find is that lectins. Now, we don't talk about this a lot, and that's, part of the reason is when I get too advanced with certain topics, some people feel overwhelmed. Like, well, if I have to now deal with this, then there's no way I should even worry about anything because I can't keep up with everything. And I understand that. And that's why when I talked about food combining, I said to people, this is not your first step. Meaning like you don't look at what foods combine best with others until you decide to maybe way down the line. All right. And so what I'm saying though is for some people though, lectins do matter. If you have psoriasis that won't seem to go away, if you have stubborn eczema, if you have things like these anal fissures or tears, what I do want to say is sometimes you'll find a particular food group or even just one or two foods cause this. So Shawn, if you're seeing this only every couple months, when it does happen, you need to correlate what did you eat that day or two before. So a lot of times it's nuts with a lot of people in my practice. And again, we can say nuts are good for you, but I always say, but for who? Not for everyone. So for some people, the lectins in those nuts do aggravate that area of your body. And for some people, it is gluten. For others, it is dairy. For even some people, it's any really high FODMAP food. So Shawn, what I want you to do is kind of really look at what foods are causing the most exacerbation of that. And then I would also say, you'll want to either run an organic acids test or just complete the candida and bacterial overgrowth protocol to start removing the gut dysbiosis and rebuilding your gut from the ground up. Those are my recommendations. Hopefully that helps, Shawn. Lisa's up next. Hi, Dr. Cabral. Loving your podcast and the time you put in to help so many. I have a couple questions. What cookbook or resources, Instagram, Pinterest, does your wife use when cooking for the family? This would help me so much. My other question is, I've been on a vegan diet, 80% raw, for 1 year, hoping to heal my tongue problem. I know you have talked about this in the past, and I'm ordering your bacterial overgrowth supplements to see if this will help. If I do not eat any sugar, not even fruit sugar, for at least 3 months, why can't I starve the bacteria and get rid of the white coating on my tongue? Thank you so much. All right, so this is a really great couple of questions. So one is my wife follows and looks at a lot of different recipe guides on Instagram and Pinterest. So too many to even count. But what I'd like to do instead of that is, instead of just giving you our favorites, is teach you a little bit about what we do. So for the most part, maybe like there's one or maybe two at the most, I'll say fancy meals per week, meaning like there's more, like it's a new recipe. So it's my wife trying out a new recipe, it's new ingredients, things that we may not have tried before. But the problem is what we think about, like, and again, I work with a lot of very famous chefs. I mean, I know like they were on Top Chef, they were on other shows, and they are eating very simply. When they want to make a nice dinner for friends, that's when they go more all out. So what I want you to think about is simple for the most part. So we choose a protein. So my wife, we're both very close to being vegetarian, vegan. However, I do have some animal protein in my diet, not frequent, but some. And I have more fish than maybe my wife has. But for protein at night, we're choosing a protein, whether it's lentils or beans or something like that. And then we're choosing 1 or 2 or 3 different vegetables, okay? Now that vegetables may have a new spice to it. It might have something like that. And then we're doing a starch as Japanese yams is one of our favorites. I'll just give that as an example. And we make that into a meal. And we're just rotating our veggies, our starches, our healthy fats, which is typically olive oil in my house because that's what I'm a big recommender of. And then we are choosing and rotating the protein. So we're rotating our foods. Now, again, for a couple times a week, she may actually look at a recipe and get a little fancier and a little bit more gourmet, and they're all delicious. It's great. But really trying to eat simpler is so much healthier for you. I'm going to actually do an interview with my wife on the podcast, so stay tuned for that one, where she'll share a lot of what she does for our family, for our children, and how she comes up with a lot of these recipes and meals. But again, they're also me working with my wife saying these are the foods that we want to work with. And she's so knowledgeable now. I mean, she's one of the best nutritionists I know, and she doesn't even do any nutrition coaching. It's just she's learned a lot and she retains it. And so anyway, she's excellent at that. So here's the thing, tongue-based issues, and you cannot wipe out candida and bacterial overgrowth by not just eating sugar. That's the misnomer, is that we can go on a candida diet. Candida diets do not exist in the real world because yeast cannot be fully eradicated or wiped out. That's the misnomer. And I'll talk about this in depth on a future Cabral concept. But what I want you to know is that yeast will be in our body well after we are gone. And that's because it will also help to decompose our body. What we want to do is keep yeast in check and bacteria in check. And that means creating a better microbiome and gut balance. So imbalance is called gut dysbiosis. And that white coating can also be from foods that have caused some type of histamine-based issue in the body, any type of fermentation in the gut. So even eliminating, the nice thing is when you go on our candida and bacterial overgrowth protocol, you'll find that you're actually able to eat fruit. We just tell you which fruit don't feed yeast and candida or bacterial overgrowth. So I think you'll find that that's very helpful. You can do all the tongue scraping in the world. It's simply not going to help. Zinc will help with some of these. Doing a natural mouthwash will help to remove bacteria from the mouth, such as the one I recommended in a previous podcast. I believe it's by Lucky. You can look that one up. And so all of these things will help, but really what we're looking for is the tongue starts the top of the digestive system. So it starts with the esophagus and goes down to the stomach and then through the small intestine and large intestine. So really what we're talking about is fixing 28 feet and not just in the mouth. Hopefully that makes sense. Jen is up next. Hi, Dr. Cabral. I'm loving your podcast and slowly making my way through your older episodes while continuing to listen to your new ones. You always provide such good information. I recently listened to a podcast you did on food sensitivities. You were talking about common signs or symptoms a person can experience, and I'm one of those who has a headache response to certain foods. I can never figure out a connection between the foods, though. Is it common to have sensitivities to foods, which on the surface appear to have nothing in common? I'm already 100% dairy-free for about 5 years, 90% gluten-free for about 1 year, and 75% egg-free for about 1 year. So I think I've done a good job in eliminating the top contenders you mentioned. I've always noticed that I get a strong headache, near a migraine, but not quite when I eat onions. Typically only happens with raw, but sometimes cooked. Garlic, worse with raw and not cooked. Not too bad with garlic powder or seasoning and cilantro. Salsa and guacamole used to be a favorite of mine, but they are off limits. To me, these foods have nothing in common. So it's funny because I'm reading this now for the first time and I know exactly what the issue is. Okay, so that was me ad-libbing in there. I'm going to read the rest of Jen's question. To me, these foods have nothing in common aside from the common use of Mexican dishes. I found that the headaches effect happens when both of these foods are combined and when they are solo ingredients in a dish. Anyhoo, I'm totally open to taking a food sensitivity test. I'm going to have to just, because it's a long question, keep going down. My husband thinks I'm crazy for blaming onions, garlic, and cilantro on my headaches after eating Mexican food, and maybe I am, but I'd love to know once and for all if I really do have a sensitivity when it comes to these foods or if it's made up by me. Okay, so Jen, it's not all in your head. It's never in your head. So don't let your husband, again, I'm a guy, so I'm in that group, right? But guys write everything off very, very quickly. As doctors, they write things off faster. The only reason I'm different is because I've gone through all of this. But I can tell you, like when I speak with guys in my practice, they don't know if they feel bloating half the time or not. They don't know if they're constipated or not. They just don't really think about it the same way. They're not as in touch with their body. Now, is this for every guy? No, but again, like I have a pretty good synopsis, right? 250,000 client appointments in our practice. And I can just say that men get the same results as women, but women seem to be a little bit more in tune. Okay, so there is a connection. You just don't see it only because this is not like, I don't know, one of those things that's common knowledge will say. All the foods that you just named are high sulfur and high histamine foods. So your issue could be coming from the high sulfur, which some people don't do well with, garlic, onions, avocado, the things that you mentioned, or also those things are fermentable and they have high levels of histamine. What can histamines do? Well, they can create a cytokine-based reaction that can cause inflammation, that can cause vasoconstriction of the arteries, which can then cause a headache or migraine. Sulfur-based issues can cause the same thing with detoxification as well as the migraine. So they are absolutely food sensitivities, but those would actually not show up on a food sensitivity test. So hopefully that helps. And of course, food sensitivity tests are great, but what you're talking about is not a protein-based antigen issue. It's an actual amino acid-based issue within the foods themselves or an actual histamine-based issue. So what I would say is you'll want to try them solo in smaller amounts or eliminate them for a certain period of time. Get the body a little healthier, a little cleaner, do a detox. That's what I would recommend. And then work your way up and see if you can try those again. Maybe just with avocado first, maybe a quarter of an avocado, see if that works for you. Okay, so hopefully that helps, Jen. Megan's up next. Hi, Dr. Cabral. Over the last year, I've had an issue with multiple canker sores. I'm in my late 30s, in pretty good health, state, average stress from a working mom. Did your IgG food sensitivity test, take your daily multi, and haven't changed my toothpaste, etc. Any suggestions? They hurt. Many thanks. Okay, yes. So canker sores are related to two things. I've seen these over and over and over in my practice. So, again, there's always more possibilities, but I see it from viruses brought on by stress. And the third one is an actual acidity-based issue within the malt, because the malt has its own bacteria. We kind of think that every part of the body is just the same, but it's not. So for a lot of people, when they eat foods like high-acid foods, and again, these are healthy foods, a lot of them, pineapple or citrus or lemon or tomato or coffee. These things, although they might eventually end up a little bit alkaline within the body, especially the fruit that I mentioned, they are acid when they're actually in the mouth. And if the body doesn't have as many alkaline buffers in the mouth because of also bacterial dysbiosis in the mouth as well, you're going to have a little bit more of acid. And that acid can be, I don't know why I use this word so much, exacerbated by the acidity in those foods. So all you have to do is go to a food chart list. You can literally type into Dr. Google, alkaline food list or alkaline chart, and then it will also show you the acid-based foods. Try to see if there's a correlation when you eat these acid-based foods and if you get those canker sores. Now, the other reason is you say you have average stress for a working mom. I don't know a working mom who isn't very stressed, right? Because you have a lot to deal with. So what I would say is just make sure you're getting enough sleep, that you're taking your multi, yes, that maybe you're doing a green so that you can alkalize a little bit more. that you're doing a good daily probiotic support. So the Dr. Cabral Daily Protocol is obviously where I'm recommending to start. That gives you everything you need. And then also, you're going to try to add a little bit more of those alkaline-based foods. Spinach is a great one as well. Those dark greens are fantastic. What I would like you to do too is just see when you are stressed, does that correlate with your canker sores? Remember, we are looking for correlations. So when you get the canker sore, what happened those couple days leading up to it? Or did you just eat a meal with something acidic? And again, it could be a healthy food. It could be a tomato. It could be cooked tomatoes. It could be a sauce. It could be one of those citrus-based fruits that I just mentioned. Check that out. Let me know how it works. All right, Anonymous is up next. We're moving right along today, which is great. We have 2 more questions. So Anonymous says, "Hi, Stephen. I appreciate your knowledge and the time you give to the world. My body fat has been yo-yoing since as long as I can remember, especially due to binge eating, then watching what I eat, and then falling off. I find that if I am extreme and avoid all my food sensitivities and sugars and carbs, I'm successful. But when I try to find a balance with cheats, I always go overboard. I want to lose body fat for good, especially around the abdomen, obliques, thighs, and triceps, and learning to deal with binge eating emotionally and hoping to control with cheats eventually. I've been tempted to turn to cool sculpting because I hear that it actually helps you lose approximately 25% of body fat cells by freezing them than the traditional methods that only shrink your fat cells. At this time, I'm trying to fast to shrink my stomach and when eating very nutrient-dense foods. What is your opinion overall on yo and do yo and have any advice?" Not sure what that last line means. Thank you so much. Okay, so Anonymous, I've worked with many people just like yourself, and just keep in mind that everyone's been exactly where you are. Meaning, like, I've put on an extra 10 pounds, no problem in my life multiple times. And it's just because things start to sneak up on you. It's also why I do the Dr. Cabral detox myself personally every 12 weeks. I do it to eliminate toxins from my body. Yes, to be healthier, no doubt about it. But also within 12 weeks, there might have been some, some weight, some things that have crept up. And so what I'm doing is also just doing that to hit the reset button. Now, it may not make sense for you with a previous eating disorder because it's 2 days of shake fasting. And that might not really jive well with who you are currently. Remember, this is not you forever, but currently psychologically. And that's always okay. There's no problem with that. So a couple things I want to give you right now is a few podcasts. One is called Transitioning Off Low Carb Diets. Really recommend you go back and listen to that. I remember one of our previous questions just said they were going back and listening to previous podcast. I can't recommend that enough. And now iTunes allows me to go back 300 episodes. So if you go to iTunes, or you obviously just go to stephencabral.com/podcast, you can go back to every episode that I've ever done. And I honestly believe, and I tell this to my personal trainers, my nutritionists, my entire team, and everyone that I mentor as well, that if you listen to all of those episodes, really your foundation for functional medicine, nutrition, Ayurvedic medicine, body types will be so much higher than honestly most of the health practitioners out there. And I don't say that in a condescending, egotistical way or anything like that. This is simply an assimilation that I'm trying to give you the best that I can of over 3,000 books, 20 years of study, and really traveling all over the world. So this is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to just give back as best I can because, of course, I learned from other people. I didn't make any of this up. It's my way of assimilating it. That's the only thing unique to me. What I'm doing, though, is just taking the best of the best. Okay, so number 411, stephencabral.com/411 is transitioning off low carb diets. So yes, low carb, taking all those things out works initially, but then you want to boost that metabolism. You eventually want to be able to eat fruit, eat some good gluten-free starches, things like that. Now, what I recommend for a lot of people is one cheat meal per week. So it's scheduled, you know when it is, and then after that next morning, if it's a nighttime meal, you're right back on. You just break that cycle. But if you're not ready yet, so I know a lot of people and they couldn't do a cheat meal for over 4 months because they knew every time they did one, they knew themselves that snowballed into additional cheats and then little things crept in. So there's no need. Why not eat more carbs? That would be, your cheat meal. And again, it's not a cheat, but you're eating more carbs to help with that leptin and ghrelin levels. And I've done previous podcasts on that. That will help with more weight loss. But let's just say you do one meal and it's a rice pasta, or it might be an extra sweet potato, or it might be quinoa, or one of those things that you won't typically have, but healthy food still. And that will help too to really boost the metabolism in the long run, because you can't not give yourself carbs ever. That's a survival-based diet. That is not ideal, really whatsoever. So I want you to think of that as well, because it just doesn't make sense in the long run. And I've seen too many women really lower their thyroid because of that. I mean, you always do what you feel is best for you. There's no way to trick the body. When you do things like cool sculpting that eliminates 25% of your fat cells or a lot of your fat cells, what happens is those fat cells then become oxidized. All of those toxins are immediately released into your bloodstream. If you're not doing a detox right after that, that can be a scary proposition for your liver to have to deal with all the heavy metals, all those PCBs, all the plastics. Those are stored in your fat. Very, very dangerous. Okay. But the other thing is this, your fat will always accumulate. Even if you only leave 50% of your fat cells left, what happens is it goes to those fat cells. You cannot fool your body. It's impossible. So that's why when people do liposuction around their stomach or whatever it might be, the fat just accumulates under the armpits. It accumulates more in the hips. So you can't really fool your body. What the best thing is to work with your body type. So hopefully that helps. It sounds like you're already on the right track. You just need to find a little bit more of that balance. And you know what? No one ever gets it right the first time, the second time, the third time. There's a little ebb and flow. You're going to get it. Just get right back on that wagon. Try not to cheat for a good 3 to 4 weeks. Then after that, plan a cheat meal and then just say, okay, every Saturday night, every Friday night, whatever it might be, that's when I go with my friends. That's when I have a cheat meal. The rest of the time, I make good decisions. I eat clean, healthy foods. All right, last question of the day. Hi, Stephen. Thank you for giving back with this podcast. You are truly making a change in the world. I'm confused because I've been meeting many health practitioners, nutritionists, naturopathic doctors, etc., that are overweight, not obese, but body composition is not ideal, but seemingly eat well and do not look like what I am led to believe is an optimal health, although that is their business. I'm wondering how much of how lean you are or how you look is a reflection of your health, because similarly, I know many people who look healthy, but I know do not eat well and or have health issues. I do not want to judge a book by its cover and or halt anyone's feelings, but better understand this so I know how to perceive it. Can you please shed some light on this? Thank you so much for answering our questions. All right. I don't know if you heard my daughter screaming in the background. I'm at home recording this podcast today. Usually I'm at the office, but so we have a lot of interesting sounds now in the background right now. All right. So let's get to your question. All right. And apologies. Let's read this person's name. They obviously deserve their name to be read, except that their name is anonymous. Okay. So that's okay. We won't read your name. So here's the thing. Every naturopath, every nutritionist, every accountant, every lawyer, every real estate agent, everyone is different, right? They're all different in how they practice as well. So there's a lot of people who they might only know one form of doing what they do, which is okay as well. Meaning like there's a lot of naturopaths, there's a lot of nutritionists right now who are promoting the keto diet and it's what they do and it's all they believe in. But if you're a true nutritionist, if you're a true naturopath, how are you not taking into account bioindividuality? Where some people would do well on a low-carb diet and others would do really poorly. So sometimes it's just not a deeper understanding yet, and it just might be where they're at in their career. But also, they might be truly brilliant. They might know exactly what they're talking about, and a lot of times that's the case. But keep in mind, they're human. And they have the same eating disorders as other people. They have the same issues or just, willpower that leads a lot of other people to eat poor foods, Now, I know a lot of people who preach this and preach that, but I also know personal trainers who smoke. I know nurses and doctors who smoke. We all know that it's bad for you. We all know that it's a minimum of 7 times the cancer risk. It's actually more like 40 times of lung cancer. So we know all of these things are dangerous and they're not good for us, but a lot of people still do them. And being a naturopathic doctor or being a natural health coach does not preclude you from the same human condition that others have. So I do agree that we should not judge anyone. We never know their story. We never know what they're going through. We just don't. And the truth is they could be giving you very good information and maybe they're just not following it themselves. Or maybe they are, but they're just having a really hard time. They're having to struggle right now themselves with keeping the weight off. Because maybe nutrition is one part of the equation, but they haven't looked at hormones if they're a nutritionist. Maybe they haven't looked at certain type of exercise. So there's so many things that go into this equation. And I do want to also say, to answer your question, you're absolutely correct. There's a lot of people who are lean and there's a lot of people who eat poorly. And they're still healthy. And you know what? Genetics do play a role. There's no doubt about that. But we can't cop out on that. But we can also say, well, it may not have hit them yet because a lot of things are internal. They're deep inside of the body before they exhibit themselves as a disease. And one day, someone wakes up with heartburn, GERD, Hashimoto's, rheumatoid arthritis, psoriasis, and they're like, I don't know what happened. I just woke up with it. Well, that's been years in the making. So all these inflammatory foods, it's years in the making. And another thing as well, there's a lot of ectomorphs out there, right? That's the Vata body type. I'll tell you right now, the Vata body type, they can eat 500 grams of carbs per day. and they will not gain weight. Their body is internally very revved up. They're more in that sympathetic nervous system. They burn more glucose naturally. They don't have to worry about sugar like a lot of the other people. Now, some do, some don't. Okay? So what I'm saying is they can get away with it. And that is not something that a lot of endomorphs or even some meso-endomorphs really like, because they go out with friends and they're thin and they can eat whatever they want. And truly, they can, because their body will not put on body fat, at least yet. Sometimes later in life, it does. So what I'm trying to say is, what I would do is let's separate the person's look and who really how they come off with the knowledge that they're trying to provide you. Is the knowledge sound? Because if it is, listen to it. That's really, really important. I'm a big believer in that. Now, I'm also a big believer in walking the walk, because as someone who's trying to live the lifestyle, I believe that is important. But maybe it's important for like the long run that you look at this person. Are they really doing what they preach? But in the short term, if this naturopath, if this nutritionist is trying to help you out with Lyme disease, or they're trying to help you out with whatever it might be, again, that knowledge is what you need, and not necessarily if they're following their own advice, because it isn't easy, right? We all know that. All this takes work. If I wrote a book, trying to just tell people that this was all easy, it'd be a bestseller, many times over. We've all seen that. But I refuse to lie to people. And that's just not the way it is, because what I want people to get results that last. So if it takes 12 to 16 weeks to get results, I'll tell you that. I'm okay with that. 3 to 4 months of your life, that seems like a pretty good trade-off for me to reaching the ideal body, to reaching your ideal wellness, for overcoming a lot of these gut-based issues, these autoimmune issues. I think that's not a bad trade-off, but I won't tell you you'll get there in 3 days. I'm not going to give you the, how to lose 30 pounds in 30 hours. That's not me. So hopefully that answers your question. I do the best I can. I can only give you it from obviously my opinion, my standpoint, but I do try to draw upon all the thousands of people that I've met with. And honestly, I've mentored and I've coached hundreds of health practitioners. And I just know that we all come in different shapes and sizes. All of us are pretty much trying to do our best, but we share with the same struggles as everyone else. Thank you everyone for tuning into another Cabral Concept. Truly appreciate each and every one of your listens. Thank you very much. I'll speak with you tomorrow.
I want to sincerely thank you for your support of this podcast. I couldn't do it without you, and I mean that. I truly do. I also want to make sure you knew that we now have multiple ways for you to find your answers to the most difficult health, wellness, weight loss, and anti-aging questions. You can find podcast-specific topics like thyroid, adrenal, hormones, sleep, digestion, Ayurveda, and many more at stevencabral.com/podcasts that will then link you to your favorite Apple, Spotify, and other podcast players. Plus, all new podcasts and weekly exclusive video content is being added to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Stephen Cabral. And that's Stephen with a PH. Head on over and subscribe so that you don't miss any of the exclusive content. Lastly, if you've ever found any of my podcasts or books to be helpful, I would really appreciate it if you could leave a review on iTunes or your favorite media player for the podcast. Rating and subscribing to the YouTube and podcast allow me to reach more and more people and help spread my mission of healing throughout the world. Thank you again for being a part of this movement.